because you was raised on secular humanism and socialism and, man is inherently good, and we were not taught spiritual things. We don't understand the spirit world. We don't understand there's a real devil. There's a guy named Satan. This was Lucifer, and he has people in this earth that are doing his will for him. Take his ringing out of this mic. Do something, take his ring. His ring is in here. Amen? So because we're not taught the true nature of man. Say the true nature of man. We were not taught the true nature of man without God, because when everybody was telling us we were good all the time, even without God. So we don't know that the true nature of man is to continually do evil. That's what the Bible says in Genesis 6. That's why God destroyed the earth. He said, because man's heart is just continually to do evil. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So the true nature of man is to continue to do evil. That's why we needed a Savior who will come and set men free. The problem with this is we don't understand there are people. The Bible calls them the seed of the serpent. There are the seed of the serpent. There are people who are actually planted in this earth that know the devil. They worship Satan. They know that Lucifer is their God. They know, some of them know they're going to hell. They are the seed of the serpent. They've been planted in this earth to do the will of God, to do the will of the enemy. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Are y'all there? The Bible describes it in Matthew when it talks about a good man sowed good seed in his field. And when the men slept, the enemy came in and sowed weeds amongst the wheat. And the master, the servant said, let's go pull up the weeds. And the master said, no, don't pull them up. Let them both grow up together. That means the good and the evil is growing together at the same time. So Satan has a seed growing. God has a seed growing. Say, man, Satan's seed is setting the world up for the Antichrist to reign. The Bible even says that there are kings that give their power to the beast. In Revelations, it talks about before the Antichrist comes, there will be kings, there will be men. I don't know if it's necessarily kings. It could just be powerful, rich men, big multi-corporation type men who give their power to the beast.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank everyone for commenting, subscribing, tuning into the show. Thank you to our first and foremost, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We keep him first. We follow his word. And again, we want everybody to walk through this door with us as we break down, as we discuss the New World Order. You know, what is it? We're going to discuss a few topics that that helps this whole system fall into play, different agendas that they're trying to push, and how everything, whether you believe it or not, is done by design. Nothing is done by coincidence. Now, of course, things may happen to but for the most part, everything is done by design. It's all a plan. This is a plan that they've been putting together for so long. So we have topics, we have a few documents that we're going to be reading from, and our goal is just not to give you all worldly knowledge, but to we hope that this will of course let you know what's going on in the world, but get you closer to the Lord. Let you know what these people are into that's in charge of making decisions for us, and don't put your trust into man.
Yeah, tie it in with the scriptures. That's what we aim to do. Yeah. Tie everything in that you're going to see today with scripture, so you can know these things will come to pass because it is in the word of God.
Yeah. By the end of the show, we going to hope to scare you enough to go to the Lord.
All right. Well, okay, let's dive into it, guys. Okay, so we're going to start off. You know, the name, the New World Order, is seen as something. Okay, well, let me let you know all what I'm going to be reading from. So for the first part, I'm going to be reading from ex-CIA agent. His name is Dr. John Coleman. It is called, just in case you all want to look this up, Conspirators Hierarchy: The Story of the 300 Committee by Dr. John Coleman. Now, he gets into who's running the world. You know, when they say, oh, they make the decisions for us, or who is they, he gets into who is they and what do they want to push. He gets into the Committee of 300, the Club Rome. He gets into the Olympians. He gets into the Masons, the Illuminati. Now, I'm not going to go through all of that because this is a 169-page document. I'm just going to be reading off some of their agendas. But just imagine like a whole world connected together. You got people on top of the world. They are called a certain name, but they have branches underneath them that they put in certain sectors of the world that's in charge of carrying out their orders, and those people have different names as well. And in this packet, it goes on to say how if you aren't a part of one of the clubs, they don't select you to be in the region of the world to push out an agenda.
Right.
So in order to be a part of a party or any politician or any research institute, any anything, you have to come from some sort of branch to where they know what you're going to push out.
Yeah.
And that's
which is masonry and the divine nine that we talked about. That's a form of it.
yeah, that's also a form of it. It's also it's all in the pyramid.
Yeah.
So at the top of the pyramid you have one club, but they also have all of these steps of these clubs that you have to be a part of in order to get this through.
You show more allegiance,
y'all are on your way.
you show more allegiance, you get more knowledge. You get more,
And if you don't follow through with it, they will take you out. You know, they took a couple prime ministers out by not passing laws, and they put a person into play that was willing to do it to help overthrow a country or bring a country down, just so they can push these agendas.
knowledge and trust to put you in power.
Amen.
I gotta trust you to be in this situation.
Yes.
But we
That's
want you to-
yes. And if you think
you said it like it was past tense. They currently doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
They still getting them up out of here.
Yeah.
You don't push what I tell you to, you got to go.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump into it. We're going to punch in and out of this document and go into some okay. So let me remind you all, this document was put out in 1991. So as I'm reading from this ex-CIA agent, he had been collecting data from like the 80s, the 70s, up until 1991. And this is the perspective that this is coming from. Now, keep that in mind. All right, so we're going to get into it, guys. Now, it says the name The New World Order, and this is coming from Dr. John Coleman, is seen as something developed. And before I get started as well, Dr. John Coleman, he had went undercover in one of these clubs as well. So that's how he was able to get this information at this time. This is 1991. So 1991, I think what today that we were like 30 years ago or 40 maybe
20 plus.
20 plus. Okay. So the name The New World Order is seen as something developed as a consequence of the Gulf War in 1991, whereas the one world government is recognized as being centuries old. The New World Order is not new. It has been around and developing under one or another guise for a very long time, but is perceived as a development of the future, which is not the case. The New World Order is past and present. That is why I said earlier that the term one world government is or ought to be preferred. Now that's, I just want to get you all like prepped up of like this is the New World Order guide that he is reading from. Okay, so now let's get into it. Okay, so it says to keep people everywhere from deciding their own destinies by means of one created crisis after another and then managing such crisis. This will confuse and demoralize the population to the extent where faced with too many choices of apathy on a massive scale will result. In the case of the United States, an agency for crisis management is already in place. It is called the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA, what we know today as FEMA, whose existence I first disclosed in 1980. There will be more on FEMA as we proceed.
He said creating the
crisis management.
Crisis, and then fixing it, basically creating.
Yes, sir.
Creating the crisis and
now you're getting it. Yes.
And that's the same thing. I mean, that's the same thing the Antichrist will do. You know, are the people of the world going to create the crisis for the Antichrist to be revealed? Because he's going to solve all the problems. He's going to have all the answers.
Yes, Desi, and that's what they need to happen. In order for this to happen, they have to create. Because if there's no problem at all, why would we need to usher in? And this is something that they've been planning since like the early 1900s.
Yes.
It just didn't. This is an old document that I'm reading from. Now it says Malthus maintained that man's progress is tied to the Earth's natural ability to support a given number of people, beyond which point Earth's limited resources would rapidly be depleted. Once these natural resources have been consumed, it will be impossible to replace them. Now, hence, Malthus observed it is necessary to limit populations within the boundaries of decreasing natural resources. It goes without saying that the elite will not allow themselves to be threatened by a burgeoning population of useless eaters. Hence, culling must be practiced. As I previously stated, culling is going on today using the methods mandated in the Global 200 report. Okay.
That's what they call us, useless eaters.
Yeah, because that's what they,
I mean,
Just
it
taking up
says
space.
taking up space.
Yeah.
The Committee of 300 ordered the Club of Rome to use Polish nationalism as a tool to destroy the Catholic Church and pave the way for Russian troops to reoccupy the country. And then it's,
Pretty accurate.
yeah, and
And
this
this
was,
is the Club of Rome.
yes, the Committee of 300, because you got the Committee of 300 too. They ordered the Club of Rome. Like, these are all the top, like in the top of the pyramids. You got the Olympians also. They're in the top of the pyramids as well.
I got some some of the
Scriptures?
groups.
Oh,
No,
groups?
some of the
Let's
groups.
go.
The Round Table. These are all groups
That's in here. Yes, sir. That's in here. Yep.
These are all groups and organizations that your presidents are in, that your politicians are in, that your physicists, doctors, that your
Uncles,
actors,
fathers, pastors,
preachers,
baby
musicians.
entertainers.
These are the different groups that they're in. The Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission calls 2023 year one of the New World Order. They call it this. They openly call it the year one of New World Order.
Yeah.
The Royal Institute of Affairs of Eternal Affairs.
Yeah.
Then I got the Club of Rome. Bilderberg. Group
Yes, Bilderberg.
well.
Yes, sir.
Bilderberg
That's
group
in
as
here.
well. All of these they in lockstep in unison with each other. They have to, to lay the groundwork for the Antichrist to come here. It
got Swift
it
in
can't
there.
just be.
Can't forget about Swift. We got to get on their line too.
It can't just be a few. It has to be all these CEOs, when you hear about these companies eating up or buying out other companies. So therefore, only 4 groups own the news and everything.
Yeah. And so no, that's actually great, because all the groups that he named are in here, and those groups are used, like he said, to lay the foundation of this one world government, this new world, old world order. And that's exactly what the ex-CIA agent is explaining, like what these groups like actually do. So he said, and you all can punch in anytime you all have scriptures or anything else. Feel free, because that's what this all about. We're going to bring this all together.
This is what these think tanks do.
That's what it is. That's what they said. It's just a think tank.
Yeah.
Now, Brzezinski is the author of a book that should have been read by every American interested in the future of this country, entitled The Technotronic Era. It was commissioned by the Club of Rome. Now, this book is an open announcement of the manner and methods to be used to control the United States in the future. It also gave notice of cloning and robotoids, people who acted like people and who seemed to be people, but who were not. Now, before I get to the next paragraph, what he just said, he said it also gave notice of cloning and robotoids, people who acted like people and who seemed to be people, but who were not. Now, Brzezinski, speaking for the Committee of 300, said the United States was moving into an era unlike any of its predecessors. He says, "We were moving toward a technotronic era that could easily become a dictatorship." Now, Brzezinski went on to say that our society is now in an information revolution based on amusement focus, spectator spectacles, saturation coverage by television of sporting events, which provide an opiate of an increasingly purposeless mass. Was Brzezinski another seer and a prophet? Could he see into the future? The answer is no. What he wrote in his book was simply copied from the Committee of 300's blueprint, given to the Club of Rome for execution. Now, isn't it true that by 1991, we already have a purposeless mass of citizens? We could say that 30 million unemployed and 4 million homeless people are now a purposeless mass, or at least a nucleus of one.
Founded in 1832, Skull and Bones is the oldest of Yale's many secret societies. Historically, admission is reserved for senior Yale undergraduates. Every year in the spring, 15 new members from the junior class are offered membership on what is often called Tap Night. A custom aptly named, as the new member is said to be notified of their admittance when a current member ritually claps them on the shoulder. Skull and Bones members are known to take an oath of secrecy, so their rituals and intricacies are highly guarded, despite the fame of their members. One thing we do know is the physical location of the Skull and Bones clubhouse and headquarters. The nearly windowless building, simply known as The Tomb, is housed in a large brownstone located at 64 High Street in New Haven, Connecticut. To preserve confidentiality, non-members are prohibited from entering. The macabre decor of the clubhouse is well suited to Skull and Bones' distinctively ghoulish spirit. The tomb is said to be adorned with skeletons, skulls, and other dark works of art. There is a popular rumor that the stolen skull of the Apache leader Geronimo is a relic that is housed within the tomb's cadaverous walls. In 2009, Geronimo's descendants attempted to sue the organization to get the skull returned to them, but were unsuccessful. Portraits of its distinguished members line the walls of the tomb as well. Portraits that might feature such esteemed bonesmen, like former presidents George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, and William Howard Taft, as well as the father of American football and the founder of the NCAA, Walter Camp, the man who helped create the Hubble telescope, Lyman Spitzer, Time magazine's founder Henry Luce, Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart, former Secretary of State and Senator John Kerry, the so-called richest man in private equity with a personal net worth currently valued at $15.7 billion, Stephen A. Schwartzman, political journalist and author Dana Milbank, and the youngest member of President Obama's cabinet, economist Austin Goolsbee.
In addition to religion, the opiate of the masses, which Lenin and Marx acknowledged was needed, we now have the opiates of mass spectator sport, unbridled sexual lust, rock music, and a whole new generation of drug addicts. Mindless sex and an epidemic of drug usage was created to distract people from what is happening all around them. In the technotronic era, Brzezinski talks about the masses as if people are some inanimate object, which is possibly how we are viewed by the Committee of 300. He continually refers to the necessity of controlling us masses. At one point, he lets the cat out of the bag. He says, at the same time, the capacity to assert social and political control over the individual will vastly increase. It will soon be possible to assert almost continuous control over every citizen and to maintain up-to-date files containing even the most personal details about health and personal behavior of every citizen, in addition to the more customary data. Now, these files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. Power will gravitate into the hands of those who control information.
He has Parkinson's and he likes gay porn.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They know your health and they know your intimate stuff that you doing on your phone.
Well, that's the whole thing that we were talking about last week with them whole, whole TikTok situation, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all social media platforms. They have all your information already. Yeah. They already know how to look up everything. You see they got AIs out here imitating voices and things like that. So they've already got all your information. They know your dirty secrets. They know exactly what you're doing. Pay attention.
And they said they're instituting sex.
It gets... Hey.
All right, 1 Corinthians 6 verses 9 through 20. Mm-hmm. Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Yep. Do not be deceived. Neither fornicators. Those are fornicators. If they're giving up, if they're trying to institute sex, then you know it's not of God. That's just letting you know. Yep. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God. So these people are not godly. the things that they're doing. And God has said, also the Bible says, they withhold the truth and unrighteousness. I'm pretty sure if you come and ask them what they're doing in these groups, they're not going to let you know, but it will affect you on your daily basis. So
yeah,
amen.
And it's information on you. You know what I'm saying? They can know, prescribe you something wrong, or be able to bring out some dirt about you. You know, that's how they're able to find out if you're cheating on your wife or not. And when you become a politician, you either keep quiet or we're going to let everybody know.
One of the chapters in the technotronic area explains how new technology will bring in its wake intense confrontation that will strain social and international peace. Oddly enough, we are already under intense strains through surveillance. Now, Lauders in Cuba is one place where this is happening. The other is NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, where a giant computer designated 666 can store data of every type mentioned by Brzezinski, plus processing and expanding capacity to take in data for several billions more people than presently exist. Now, retrieval of data will be simple in the United States, where Brzezinski and his committee of 300 colleagues could simply add social security and or driver license numbers to 666 to provide the surveillance recording announced. Now, the committee already in 1981 warned governments, including the government of the USSR, that there will be chaos unless the Committee of 300 takes complete control of preparations of the New World Order.
In the book of Timothy, chapter 4, verse 1, said in the last days, let me grab that real fast.
And remind you, while he's getting the scripture, this is an old document. This is not a document from 3 or 4 years ago.
It's from what, 70?
This is from
60?
Right, yeah, data over time, and was just released in 1991.
Yeah, in Timothy chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "Now the Spirit expresses itself that in the last days, in the latter times, some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and devils, or doctrines of devils, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain man from certain meats, which God has created to be received in the thanksgiving, and give them what teachers who believe and know the truth." Now, what you're talking about right now is a little bit in between the two, because as of right now, we're heading towards, as of right now, they said by 2030 or something like that, they said that more than 50% of women will not be married. They'll be single. So if 50% of women are going to be single, then that's telling me 50% of men will be single. And we already know that the divorce rate is going up higher and higher due to what's going on in the economy. Because people don't want to get married anymore, because now people are looking at it more as a financial thing than a love thing, a covenant thing, giving something place before God. Theirs is married here. God bless the brother right here. You know what I'm saying? But people are not getting married anymore. They don't want to. Like, if you listen to people talk nowadays, they just don't want to get married anymore. Now,
and it's not the norm anymore either. Back then, it was that you marry after you get out of high school. You know, it was certain things like they pushed marriage. Now it's not pushed.
Having their conscience seared with a hot iron, because they are listening to everything but God.
Yeah, that's
you are listening to. Yeah, you are listening to the preachers. You're listening to the motivational speakers.
These women rappers, these dudes that's rapping,
entertainers.
Dudes ain't nothing. I'm just gonna hump them and leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even want to, man, listen, like it's so much wild stuff going on. And then on top of all of that, you have the abstaining from meats. Everybody wants to be a vegan nowadays. Everybody wants to be a vegan. And don't get me wrong, we know what's going on with the meats in this country and in the world, most likely. However, for you to sit there and say you're abstaining from all meat, that's something totally different. Now, with the technology that we have, they could move to a point where we're starting to get technical meats now. You got lab grown meat now. You got lab grown steaks. You got lab grown chicken. You got lab grown fish. Everything like that. So
I mean, these are unbelievers, because that's not biblical that you have to abstain.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, this is in the latter times. Yeah. You'll be giving in to seducing spirits. So that's exactly what's going on right now. You got a lot of people giving in to this document,
and we got a lot from and we got a lot. I
got Revelations 13, 16 through 18. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, because you said 666.
Yeah, for that big computer that they had.
Yeah, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. state that if one is wise and has an understanding to count the number of the beast, which is also the number of a man, the number 666, and also Bill Gates' patent that he has on a new tattoo technology. Let me go back to it.
Is that
the moon?
Bill Gates predicts this technology will replace smartphones, and it's a tattoo technology, and the patent is 060606.
I'm assuming that goes on your hand or your forehead.
Those numbers are everywhere now.
Yeah, we all know what's synonymous with 666 at this point. So
this might be the mark. I don't know, but you got the patent, and it's a tattoo. It's a technology tattoo.
Something that most people will willingly get.
Replace smartphones.
All right, let's get back to it. It says both Vickers and Ben are integrated with the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations, the premier brainwashing institution in the world. Now, Vickers uses his Tavistock training to very good effect when speech making. Consider the following example. He says, there are two Americas. One is a 19th century heavy industry-based society. The other is the growing post-industrial society, in some cases built on the shards of the old America. It is a crisis between these two worlds which will produce the economic and social catastrophe of the next decade. Now, the two worlds are in fundamental opposition. They cannot coexist. In the end, the post-industrial world must crush and obliterate the other one. Now remember, this speech was made in 1981, and we can see from the state of our economy and our industries just how accurate was Sir Peter's prediction. When concerned people ask me how long the 1991 recession will last, I refer to Sir Peter's statements and add my own opinion that it will not end until 95 or 96. Now also, Peter says, I am perfectly happy working with the Heritage Foundation and groups like that. True Fabians look to the new right to push through some of their moral radical ideas. For more than a decade, the British population has been subject to a constant propaganda barrage of how it was on the industrial skids. All of this is true, but the net effect of the propaganda was to demoralize the population, exactly as intended by the new science at the Tavistock Institute. It says this will happen in the United States as the economy worsens. This demoralizing process is necessary to make people accept difficult choices. If there is no planning for the future, or if constituencies block progress, there will be social chaos on a scale which is currently hard to imagine. Now, the outlook of urban America is bleak. There is a possibility of doing something with the inner cities, but basically the cities will shrink and the manufacturing basis will decline. This will produce social convulsions.
Oh yeah, I apologize. I made a mistake. So when I just read that was not it. It's not it. I Googled it, so it gave me the wrong information. But we're gonna go to Revelation 13 verses 2. I can read a little bit. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. But before you get to that, as he said, they need the manufacturing base to decline. I don't know in you all's neighborhood, but a lot of manufacturing spots a while ago, from when I was growing up, they all declined. They were closed up, and it was on to something else. Go
ahead. Chapter 13. I'm gonna start at verse 2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. So it was a great wound that happened, on the Antichrist. You might see it if you're still here.
Yep.
And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. So when they wondered, like, who can war with the beast? Basically, they start worshiping the Antichrist, and in turn they worshiped the dragon, who gave power to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And he opened his mouth, in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So he over all the whole world. Power was given to him to control the whole world. Yep. Kindreds and tongues, that's everybody. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose name are not written in the book of life. So whoever worship him, those people that's there right now that the Bible is talking about, their name is not written in the book of life at this time. Book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. We go down to 16. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in the forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that have the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 636. So that's three scores. She was mentioning 666. That's what it was about. It was all about this, and it's about unveiling, laying down the foundation, like we continue to say, for the Antichrist to come on this earth. And if you still here and you're not of the rapture, but you say you got Christian principles, he's going to war with you. When he war against the saints, because the rapture's gonna happen. Yeah. The saints that are here are the Christians that say, or the people that say they're Christians. They know the scriptures, but they still living in willful sin. So.
No.
A follower of OTO, that's Ordo Templi Orientis. OTO are well known for their use of drugs and sadomasochism. We wanted to learn more, so we spoke to a guy called John Attack, who has personally dealt with people who follow the OTO.
The OTO was a German group practicing magic which came under the control of Aleister Crowley in the 1920s. Crowley was called the wickedest man in the world, and he was a target of Hitler's. He basically was highly critical of Christianity, which he thought was bogus. He was a multiple drug abuser. He was a heroin addict by the time he died in the 1940s. He was bisexual at a time when that was rather unpopular, and he was accused of having caused some of the members of his group to commit suicide with the pressure he put on them. Along with most of the ritual magic groups of the early 20th century, the OTO compacted all of the gods and goddesses they could get their hands on. So they got the Egyptian, the Viking, the Greek, the Roman, put them all together. And they then practiced rituals which were meant to give them magical powers to get little demon entities to work on their behalf, to control other people, to do what they wanted them to do. The rituals were written down by Crowley and so have been passed on and continue to be used. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, was an avid follower of Aleister Crowley and indeed practiced the 8th ritual of the OTO, which was a homosexual magical ritual intended to bring about the birth of a moon child who would be the Antichrist. Scientology derives a great deal of material from Crowley. I must say that I consider Scientology far more dangerous than the OTO. With the OTO, it doesn't publicise, it doesn't actively recruit. It's a pretty small group. You're probably looking at a few thousand people at most. They do have a leader to whom they pay reverence, but OTO people tend to be more intellectually inclined, and they've often studied a great deal around the subject. I've dealt with the OTO and I found them perfectly friendly. Having said that, they have a very liberal attitude towards drug abuse and towards sex, which for most people would probably not be palatable. Crowley's sexual practices were very extreme, sadomasochistic practices. He had a particular penchant for women who had gonorrhea. If somebody had any kind of psychological difficulty, then this would not be a good idea.
Now, as a member of the Committee of 300, and I got you after this day. All right. As a member of the Committee of 300 and NATO, Sir Peter Vickers was around when the NATO directed the Club of Rome to develop a social program which would utterly change the direction in which America wanted to go. Now, the Club of Rome, under Tavis Scott direction, ordered Stanford Research Institute, the SRI, to develop such a program, not only for America, but for every nation in the Atlantic Alliance and the OECD nations. Now, it was Sir Peter's protege, Stuart Butler, member, who gave President Reagan 3,000 pages of recommendations, which no doubt contained some opinions expressed by Anthony Wedgwood Benn, a member of parliament and a ranking member of the Committee of 300. Benn told members of the Socialist International who met in Washington on December 8, 1980, you can thrive under Volcker's credit collapse if you profile Reagan to intensify the credit collapse. That Butler's advice was taken and applied to the Reagan administration can be seen in the collapse of the savings and loan and banking industries, which accelerated under Reagan economic policies. Now, while Benn called it profiling, he really meant that Reagan should be brainwashed. It is worth noting that von Hayek, who was a founder member of the Heritage, used his student Milton Friedman to preside over the Club of Rome plans to deindustrialize America using the Reagan presidency to accelerate the collapse of the first steel industry and then the auto and housing industry. For example, in this regard, a French black nobility member, Etienne d'Agvan, as a member of the Committee of 300, was assigned the task of collapsing the steel industry in this country. It is doubtful that any of the hundreds of thousands of steel workers and shipyard workers who have been without jobs for the past decade have ever heard of d'Agvan. So they had plans to the domino effect was to in Reagan's presidency is to collapse the savings plan, the steel industry, and it's proof of that happened in that. So far this guy is on point with this. I'll pause just in case you all have any remarks or anything you all want to say before I continue.
I feel like that's where we're at again. That was Trump's biggest thing when he was in office, was that he wanted to get the businesses back in America. He wanted to build, manufacturing companies back up in America, things of that nature. And it's mighty funny how when Trump was in office, he did put sanctions on China, and he had, certain things in place against China. Russia was pretty much with him. And then, not saying it has anything to do with the presidency, because this is all selection, but now we have this whole BRICS system setting up with Russia and China and everything like that. And I found it quite interesting last week, because right now we got basically a war going on that's been going on for the last year and some change between Iran and Saudi Arabia, right? But they both willingly joined the BRICS organization. Now, NATO is what? The national, what is it? What does NATO stand for? National Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? So there has to be, in my mind, there has to be some sort of agreement going on at BRICS to get Saudi Arabia and Iran to both sign on at the same time. Now, the U.S. has weaponized the dollar when Russia kicked off the very first part of the whole Russia and Ukraine situation by throwing sanctions on people, right? And Myra, you know more about this than I do when we're talking about the petrol dollar, right? So if BRICS is coming up with their own digital currency,
the yuan,
right? And they're going to allow other countries like Iran, Russia, and many more of them to operate without having to go through the blockchain known as SWIFT, the international fund system. It can basically turn into an alternative for countries who can trade with China and other countries amongst themselves without having to go through the U.S. Now, due to the sanctions that the U.S. has placed on these countries, such as Iran, China, Venezuela, and Russia, what do all those countries have in common? Oil.
Yep.
What does the U.S. dollar back by?
Oil.
What if they back this digital dollar by oil? Then where does that leave the U.S.?
And I think those countries you just named are like 50% of the oil supply that goes around the world.
Absolutely. So if they all come together, if they all can come together and say, what if Venezuela and a couple other countries, because Venezuela is a huge part. And
they already brought that country down. Remember last year?
Absolutely.
The money was laying in the street. People was losing.
But the Bible say a day's wage for a loaf of bread.
Hey, but listen where I'm taking it though. Because everybody around, like, I ain't gonna say everybody in the world.
Your money gonna be paper.
People in the United States tend to think that this is something that's going around the world. No, this is going down right here.
They might have $1,000 bills.
Right here, okay? This is going down right here. If they back their digital dollar by the oil that they have, because we've only got a 20-year supply worth of oil. If they want to back their oil by the money that they have, the oil that they have, they want to back their money by that oil. Think about it. The digital dollar, the digital yen or whatever, it's backed by China's oil, Russia's oil, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela's oil. They got gold.
They've been stocking up gold.
They got to stock up on it. They already got it. Don't you got African countries trying to join in on this now too?
All right, well, let me punch back in.
What I was thinking about.
Look at what happened to Sri Lanka when they couldn't trade with the U.S. no more.
But yeah, don't forget though. Don't forget. And these people could be sitting down. I believe they're sitting down at the same table.
They're all.
And this is all part of the plan.
That's what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is this is all part of the plan.
Yeah, you seem like that.
In order for the plan to work, you have to start with the biggest fish. You gotta cut the head off the shoulders, right?
Yeah.
You gotta knock the U.S. off first. Once you knock the U.S. off and knock them off their dollars, it's easier to get this new world order ushered in because now you've got all the other major countries already in the new world order.
All right, let me punch back in, then I'll let you all. I'll punch back in for two, and I'll let y'all punch back in. It says the Club of Rome feels confident that it has carried out its Committee of 300 mandate to soften up the United States. After 45 years of waging war on the people of this nation, who will doubt that it has indeed accomplished its task? Look around and see how we have been demoralized. Drugs, pornography, rock and roll music, free sex, the family unit, all but totally undermined. Lesbianism, homosexuality, and finally the ghastly murder of millions of innocent babies by their own mothers. Has there ever been a crime so vile as mass abortion? With the U.S. spiritually, morally bankrupt, with our industrial base destroyed, throwing 30 million people out of work, with our big cities ghastly cesspools of every imaginable crime, with a murder rate almost 3 times higher than any other country, with 4 million homeless, with corruption in government reaching endemic proportions, who will gainsay that the United States is ready to collapse from within into the waiting arms of the new dark age one world government? Now, the Club of Rome has succeeded in splitting the Christian churches. It has succeeded in building up an army of charismatics, fundamentalists, and evangelicals who will fight for the Zionist state of Israel. Now, during the Gulf War of genocide, I've received scores of letters asking me how I could oppose a just Christian war against Iraq. How could I doubt that Christian fundamentalist support for the Committee of 300's war against Iraq was not biblical? After all, didn't Billy Graham pray with President Bush just before the shooting started? Doesn't the Bible speak of wars and rumors of wars? Now, these letters give an insight into just how well the Tavistock Scott Institute has done its work. The Christian fundamentalists will now be a formidable force behind the state of Israel, exactly as planned.
Revelations.
Did you know that the first LGBTQ rights organization in the world was started in Germany nearly 130 years ago? Let's explore the guy who was the driving force behind it, Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld. Hirschfeld was a German physician and scientist who was a trailblazer in studying human sexuality. His work was famous across the world in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His lived experiences as gay, socialist, feminist, and Jewish shaped his worldview and his work as a scientific researcher and political advocate. Based on decades of research, Hirschfeld argued that human sexuality and gender existed along a spectrum of what he termed sexual intermediaries. He argued that because these variations were natural and inborn, society should not legally or socially discriminate against LGBTQ people. Hirschfeld founded the Scientific Humanitarian Committee in Berlin in May of 1897. The committee lobbied the German parliament to reform laws against LGBTQ people, especially Germany's anti-gay law, paragraph 175, which criminalized so-called unnatural indecency among men. Hirschfeld's committee also published the Yearbook for Sexual Intermediaries, which was the earliest scientific journal for what we today might call queer studies. The committee is often considered the first LGBTQ rights organization in the world. Driven by a belief that scientific research should have direct impact on communities, Hirschfeld established the Institute for Sexual Science in 1919. Located in the heart of Germany's capital, the Institute provided a library, social gatherings, counseling services, and healthcare for the public. The Institute was also a pioneer in trans rights, even working with the Berlin Police Department to issue certificates that allowed trans people to live openly without being arrested or fired for so-called cross-dressing.
Revelations 21 verse 8, but the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, she just mentioned abortion, that is murder, murderers, sexual immoral, scorners, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Abortion first came to play through the Supreme Court ruling with Roe v. versus Wade in 1973. Yeah, that is murder. So that's what they putting out there.
I mean, it's something that they want.
That lets you know further know that this is a demonic situation we're dealing with.
Now, other Club of Rome members in the U.S. are Walter A. Hahn of the Congressional Research Service, Ann Cheatham, and Douglas Ross, both senior economists. Now, Ross' task, in his own words, was to translate Club of Rome perspectives into legislation to help the country get away from the illusion of plenty. Ann Cheatham was the director of an organization called Congressional Clearinghouse for the Future. Her task was to profile members of Congress who would be susceptible to astrology and New Age mumbo-jumbo. At one stage, she had an excess of 100 congressmen in her classes. Daily sessions were held in which a variety of astrological forecasts were made based on her occult perceptions. Now, besides congressmen, other prominent people who attended her sessions were Michael Wash, and I'm not going to read all the names because, we may not all know. But a leading member of the Committee of 300. Now, some of the more important members of the Committee of 300 are also members of NATO, a fact which we ought to remember. Now, these Committee of 300 members often hold several offices. Among the NATO Club of Rome membership are found Harlan Cleveland, a former U.S. ambassador to NATO, Joseph Slaughter, director of Aspen, and yada, yada, yada. But the Committee of 300 has planted its agents in the muscle and sinew of the United States in its government, in Congress, in advisory posts around the president, as ambassadors, and as secretaries of state. From time to time, the Club of Rome holds gatherings and conferences which, although they appear under innocuous titles, break up into action committees, each of which is assigned a specific task and a specific target date by which time their assignments must be completed. If it does nothing else, the Committee of 300 is working to a very specific timetable. Now, the first Club of Rome conference in the United States was called by the Committee of 300 in 1969.
It lets you know when she brought up rock and roll, that's just basically another term for just all music. The devil works through rap too, not just rock and roll, but it's also in the rap music. It's also in the singing. We got Sam Smith that performed with
gospel music.
Sam Smith performed with devil horns. Billie Eilish, they said you rewind it. It says something about Satan.
What's his name? Slid down the pole from heaven. Gave Satan a lap dance.
So basically, they were saying, So basically, they were saying we was through sin. It was giving sin. They was giving stuff that was against God. That's all it was. What he was basically mentioning. Isaiah 14 verses 12. How you are falling. He's talking about the devil. How you are falling from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground. You who weaken the nations. He's weakening the nations through sin. These committees or whatever, they're coming together to figure out how we can bring forth, like I said, the Antichrist, but it's got to be through sins. We got to weaken the nations. We got to get a lot of these demons in these people,
we need another, well, I ain't gonna say we, but they need another, I'm sure another pandemic or another panic situation is on the way. Because that was like the first trial right there. That was like a free trial, a little sprinkle of it, just to see what would happen if there was ever such a thing where we just shut everything down. Don't move, no nothing. Don't nobody do nothing. China got people, they're putting a 0% interest rate on their money to make them spend the money up that they have. You have to spend your money now.
And you're going to you spend your when you get on the when we get on the app, you're gonna have to spend that money that you on that score with.
Yeah.
Unless it's gonna expire.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Don't think you finna rack up and think you finna be able to be among. No, all y'all finna be on the same playing field. We say you got 2 months to spend it. You got 2 months to spend it, and according to
that would make a boom in the economy.
Yeah.
But
according to your social credit score, you may be only allowed to spend it on this. Yeah. You may not get the same freedom as everybody.
But you might not even get the same amount as everybody. I might have to take $20. You don't like where you treated over there. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, Dave.
Ephesians 6 verse 12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness. These people are rulers of the darkness, against spiritual wickedness. Where is it at? In high places.
Amen.
As
so
you said, a pyramid at the top. My question is, the whole time we talk, you know what I have not heard?
What?
Korea.
Oh, that's in here.
I know they in here. I'm just saying. It's been a while.
I'm finna punch back in.
You finna bring up Korea. This was in the 70s. I'm talking about as of right now. Ain't nobody said nothing about Korea.
I remember being young, hearing about Skull and Bones. People saying they watched videos of Will Smith and
Skull and Bones is like everybody threw. It's like people thought about it like a joke. Like I never knew it was no.
It's like another way. See, look, that's just like if we form a club. You may not be able to get into the club the three of us form, but we'll form another club that you will be able to get in. You know what I'm saying? So we got this sacred club, but we form another club. Yeah. You all can get into this club.
You know, I still need people.
That's how they do all this.
Around us, I need people, who can work a little something out. Yeah. Because you got Masons and then you got Freemasons.
Yes, because you did the dues, but technically you ain't us. Let's just get that straight. You
telling me
you got into some coffins and drank some blood, but overall we are in control of this, and we gonna keep you in your place.
Yeah, y'all seen
what? Telling me you really think these celebrities are influencing the decisions made in the world? Get out of here. Like you said, you may have drunk some blood, you may have done some sinful stuff, but you have no impact on the decisions that's going to come down, that's going to dictate the pace of what's going to happen.
Because if you don't get with it, we're going to get rid of you.
Look what these demonic...
They get you up out of here, too.
Look what these demonic people was doing at Bohemian Grove. You got a clip for that. So.
Yeah.
These are high politicians, big wealthy people, the people, what is that? The who's who.
Yeah. This is where they go to their secret meetings.
Jeffrey Epstein got Bill Clinton in his drawers on a picture.
All right, I'm gonna punch back in for one paragraph and then I'll back in. He said, as I said in 1981, we are set up politically, socially, and economically so that we remain locked into the Club of Rome's plans. Everything is rigged against us. If we are to survive, then we must break the stranglehold of the Committee of 300 has on our government. In every election since Calvin Coolidge ran for the White House, the Committee of 300 has been able to plant its agents in key positions in government so that no matter who it gets the White House post. So it said in key positions in government so that it matters not who gets the White House post. For example, every one of the candidates who ran for the presidency from the time of Franklin D. Roosevelt were selected. Some like to call it handpicked by the Council on Foreign Relations acting on instructions of the RIIA. Okay, well, y'all ain't got nothing to say.
No, carry on. I want to hear this. This is
okay. So now we're going to skip. It's a profiling. So profiling is a technique developed in 1922 in command of the Royal Institute for International Affairs. Now, Major John Rawlings Rees, a British Army technician, was instructed to set up the largest brainwashing facility in the world at the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations as part of the Sussex University. Now, this became the core of Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau. Now, when I first introduced the names of Rees and Tavistock into the United States in 1970, very little interest was shown. But over the years, as I revealed more and more about Tavistock and its vital role in the conspiracy, it has become popular to imitate my earlier research. Now I'm about to name some of the clubs, not clubs, but some of the institutions that that the Club of Rome, the 300 committee, that they are all behind. Now, before I do that, it says Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau made extensive use of the work done by Rees on his 80,000 British Army guinea pigs. Now, captive soldiers who underwent many forms of testing. It was Tavistock who designed methods that got the United States into the Second World War, and which, under the guidance of Dr. Kurt Lewin, established the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA. Now, Lewin became the director of the Strategic Bombing Survey, which was planned for the Royal Air Force to concentrate on bombing German worker houses while leaving military targets such as munition plants alone. The munition plants on both sides belonged to the international bankers who had no wish to see their assets destroyed. Later, after the war was over, NATO ordered Sussex University to establish a very special brainwashing center, which became part of the Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau. Only now its research was discredited towards civilian rather than military applications. Now, this is important because what I'm going to read off is so you all can get a gist of these institutions, these research clinics that these groups put in place to get things set up. So, yeah, it is. Anyway. It lists several clinics and foundations, research office, the research office, psychological institutions that the Club of Rome run. For example, they have the Harvard Psychological Clinic which is to create a climate where the Committee of 300 can talk unlimited power over to the U.S. Okay. They also have the Institution for Social Research to devise a whole new set of social programs to steer America away from industry. Now they have the Science Policy Research Unit. They also have the Economic Committee of the North Atlantic Institute, which it's a NATO think tank on global economic issues. Okay. They also have an Institution for Social Relations, which is to change the way Americans think. They also have the Social Democrats USA, and their job is to spread radical socialism, especially among minority groups, and forge links between similar organization in socialist countries. Hint, the Democrat Party. And they also have the Hoover Institute. Now, these are just about 4 or 5 institutes that I named. They have, honestly, hundreds, thousands of them planted. Certain institutions, certain universities, research, they have clinics all over planet, strictly by the Committee 300 and the Club of Rome. Now, I'll let y'all punch in. Well, yeah, that.
And Jeremiah said, "No, whatsoever is done among them is false, and that it may be." I'm sorry. How may it be then thought or said that they are gods? Because obviously everyone's familiar with the whole scripture where Jesus said, you are gods and the scripture can't be broken. And David first spoke that when he was speaking in the book of Psalms, where he said, you are gods, but you are children of the Most High, and you shall die like men. So basically, these people who are speaking that we're talking about, a lot of these people are looked at to your role model as a god or a goddess. They look at them and hold them in that regard. And that's why the Bible tells you can't serve more than one. Mm-hmm. Well, how could you serve more than one if there's only one? Because you have people out here pretending to be one. You have people out here saying they can be one. And by worldly standards, they are. If you're just going off of worldly standards, they can do whatever they want. These people that we speak of, these people that we are bringing to your attention, they've literally done everything they want. If you ain't figured it out by now, they can do whatever they want.
Leaving spiders come not here. A quote from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, adopted by elite aristocrats and powerful businessmen of America to imply their Bohemian Grove retreat was nothing more than a recreational getaway. Except they didn't always live up to their motto. Retreats are types of group outings in which members take time to bond with one another, reflect on their purpose and aspirations, and cooperate on one or more specific goals. Various groups groups in America, such as scouts, students, athletes, and clergy, participate in retreats as a way to withdraw from society temporarily in a quiet and secluded place where people can relax. In order to understand the Bohemian Grove, we must first talk about the Bohemian Club, which was supposedly formed in 1872 by an unknown number of individuals. Although it is aforementioned that in 1869, Junius Henry Brown said, in explaining the Bohemian Club, that New York's Bohemia had consisted of 15 or 20 journalists, the greater part of them young men of ability and culture, who had their rise and association about 12 years ago and flourished up to the commencement of the Civil War, which broke up the Bohemian fraternity, not only here but in other cities as well. The name Bohemia, or Bohemian, was chosen because it signified a cultured intellectual as opposed to those more simple-minded. However, this name could have been chosen just to inflate their own ego. One of the founding members of both the Bohemian Club and Bohemian Grove was Henry Edwards. Edwards was a stage actor and wanted to further his career by moving to New York City. In 1878, over 100 individuals gathered in the Redwoods near Taylorville, California, for a send-off party in Edwards' honor. The participants enjoyed the peaceful evening as they relaxed on blankets strewn about the redwood thicket, and this festive gathering was repeated the following year, and the location in the Redwoods became their usual encampment. Gradually, the club expanded to politicians and affluent businessmen, leading to more and more land being bought by members, producing what we now have today, known as the Bohemian Grove. Although Henry Edwards was a founding member, the ritual meetings year after year became a beast of its own. Only the original founders know exactly why they created the Bohemian Grove, but some theories are they wanted to create a relaxing atmosphere similar to the night of Edwards' send-off party. They wanted to explore the arts as traditional Bohemians would, or they were all lizard demons sent from hell to suck the soul.
They have rotations in set.
It says,
they got things. This like I tell y'all all the time. Y'all know I just tell people all the time, man, go watch the Truman Show. Like that's what it is. Everything is set in place.
This is
but it's to happen.
In 1924, here Henry Gerber, a German immigrant, founded in Chicago the Society for Human Rights, the first documented gay rights organization. So it was by a German man. Henry was a early homosexual rights activist in the United States, inspired by the works of a German's Magnus, I think, Hertzfeld. So this is letting you know that they brung that, they I don't know if this guy was Khazarian or whatever. They brung that over here. Yeah. Demonic, he got off the plane full of demons.
I mean,
ready to get busy, get to work.
The plane was out. There was a demon coming in. Yeah, the trail coming in when he flew in.
He wanted everybody to get down how he was getting down.
And I mean, even going back to the shooting that just happened, school shot up.
One more. Marriage equality is a global issue according to the Human Rights Campaign. There are currently 34 countries in which same-sex marriage is legal. Of those countries, 23 legalize same-sex marriage through legalization. 10, including the United States, was through the judicial system. Courts.
Okay, well,
that's letting you know, man. This stuff is spreading,
So
it is.
And Jesus said, fornicators, adulterers, homosexuals will not inherit the kingdom of God. So these are people that will not inherit the kingdom of God.
The fact that this country even stands on, because they had all of us in school pledging allegiance like fools as children. We know no better though. Yeah. But one nation under God. Yeah. Indivisible, all that other stuff, man. Listen, ain't none of this godly. You just heard what they said. They did this through the judicial system. A day or two after children, not just adults, children was murdered. There was protests on the steps for these gay rights, for the fact that the person who did it was murdered by officers And that, I don't wish death on nobody, but that was a person on a rampage. That person clearly had no disregard for nothing. If you've seen the video, that person just barged through that building. Like I said, 3 innocent children, 3 adults. Yeah, and that person was killed by officers. And you had protests a few days later talking about it was an unjust kill. They should have never done such a thing. What were they supposed to do? You're killing children. What are they supposed to do? They can't apprehend you, and you got an assault rifle, and you're going crazy with it. But if you take it back down to the 70s, people tend to forget that a bunch of gay rights activists set a hotel on fire with police officers in the hotel. Right. And that same hotel was honored as a national landmark by whom? Our dear beloved Barack Obama named that a national treasure.
Okay.
So things that, like you said, is set in place, and there's a lot of people, along with the man you just mentioned, along with Barack and a bunch of other people, who are set the table, and it's continuing to go.
I'm gonna punch back in. Let y'all get busy. Now, one in particular, I want to, they do have also the Human Resources Research Office, which is called the HRRO. Now, this is an Army research establishment dealing in psychotechnology. Okay. Now, most of its personnel are Tavistock trained. Now, psychotechnology covers GI motivation, morale, and music used by the enemy. In fact, a lot of what George Orwell wrote about in his book 1984 appears to be remarkably similar to what is taught at the HUMRRO. In 1969, the Committee of 300 took over this important institution and turned it into a private nonprofit organization run under the direction of the Club of Rome. It is the largest behavioral research group in the U.S. Now, one of its specialties in the study of small groups under stress, and the HUMRRO teaches the Army that a soldier is merely an extension of his equipment and has brought great influence to bear on the man/weapon system and its human quality control. It's so widely accepted by the United States Army. Now, the HUMRRO has had a very pronounced effect on how the Army conducts itself. Its mind-bending techniques are straight out of the Tavistock Institute. Now, the HUMRRO's applied technology courses are supposed to teach Army brass how to make the human weapon work. A good example of this is the manner in which soldiers in the war against Iraq were willingly to disobey their field manual standing orders and bury 12,000 Iraqi soldiers alive. Now, this type of brainwashing is terribly dangerous because today it is applied to the Army. The Army applies it to brutally destroy thousands of enemy soldiers, and tomorrow the Army could be told that civilian population groups opposed to government policies are the enemy. Now, we are already a mindless, brainwashed flock of sheep, yet it seems that the HUMRRO can take mind bending and mind control a step further. Now, the HUMRRO is a valuable adjunction to Tavistock, and many of the lessons taught at HUMRRO were applied in the Gulf War, which makes it a little easier to understand how it became to be that American soldiers behaved as ruthless and heartless killers, a far cry from the concept of the traditional American fighting man. Now, they also have the Research Analyst Corporation. Now, this is basically HUMRRO's sister. In 1984, the organization, situated in McLean, Virginia, established in 1948. It was taken over by the Committee of 300 in 1961 when it became part of the Johns Hopkins block. It has worked on over 600 products, including integrating Negroes into the Army, the tactical use of nuclear weapons, psychological warfare programs, and mass population control. Now, obviously, there are many more major think tanks, and we shall come to most of them in this book that he talks about. But he says one of the most important areas of cooperation between what think tanks turn out and what becomes government and public policy are the pollsters. It is the job of the polling companies to mold and shape public opinion in the way that suits the conspirators. Now, polls are constantly being taken by CBS, NBC, ABC, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Now, most of these efforts are coordinated at the National Opinion Research Center, where, as much as it will amaze most of us, a psychological profile was developed for the entire nation. Now, findings are fed into the computers of Gallup poll and Yankelovich, Scaly, and White for comparative evaluation. Much of what we read in our newspapers or see on television has first been cleared by the polling companies. What we see is what the pollsters think what we should see. This is called the public opinion making. The whole idea behind this bit of social conditioning is to find out how responsive the public is to policy directives handed down by the Committee 300. Now, we are called targeted population groups, and what is measured by the pollsters is how much resistance is generated to what appears in the nightly news. Later, we shall learn exactly how this deceptive practice got started and who's responsible for it. It is all a part of the elaborate opinion-making process created at Tavistock. Today, our people believe they are well informed, but what they do not realize is that the opinions they believe are their own were in fact created in the research institutions and think tanks of America, and that none of us are free to form our own opinions because of the information we are provided with by the media and the pollsters.
I'll pause. No, I ain't bringing you here for that.
Nope.
I ain't ask you for your help on any of that. We got this.
Now, polling was brought to a fine art just before the United States entered the Second World War. Now, Americans, unbeknownst to themselves, were conditioned to look upon Germany and Japan as dangerous enemies who had to be stopped. Now, in a sense, this was true, and that makes conditioned thinking all the more dangerous because based on the information fed to them, the enemy did indeed appear to be Germany and Japan. Now, just recently, we saw how well Tavistock conditioning process works when Americans were conditioned to perceive Iraq as a threat and Saddam Hussein as a personal enemy of the United States. Now, such a conditioning process is technically described as the message reaching the sense organs of a person to be influenced. Now,
they want you to get in agreement with killing people.
There you go.
Agreement with going to war.
In October 2000, the president of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, announced they would no longer be selling oil in US dollars, only in euros. Which on the surface is an innocent change. What's the big deal? The big deal is that Iraq has the 5th largest petroleum reserves in the world, and in the 2000s it had become the world's 5th largest oil producer. So when Hussein decided to start selling oil in euros instead of dollars, the US wasn't too happy. By February 2003, he has sold over 3 billion barrels of oil for 26 billion euros. A month later, the US invaded Iraq.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
In an operation ironically called Operation Iraqi Freedom. They overthrew Saddam, and by June, just 4 months later, the country was back to selling oil in dollars. Years later, a number of US officials started to let the truth seep out. Former head of US operations in Iraq, General John Abizaid, said, "Of course it's about oil. We can't really deny that." Former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan wrote in his memoir that, quote, "I'm saddened that it's politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows. The Iraq War is largely about oil," end quote. And former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said the same in 2007. Quote, "People say we're not fighting for oil. Of course we are," end quote. Venezuela, 2002. Coincidentally, Venezuela also has large oil reserves. In fact, they have the largest proven oil reserves in the world. At the time, Hugo Chavez was in charge of Venezuela as the dictator president. But Chavez, a die-hard anti-American leader, was about to make the same grave mistake that Saddam Hussein made. He planned to start selling oil for euros instead of the mighty American dollar. Well, we can't have that now, can we? So in 2002, the US backed a coup against Chavez, which ultimately failed, but it crippled the country and its economy. Empires are built on oil. Yet despite having the largest oil reserves in the world, today Venezuela is one of the poorest economies in the world. Do other factors play into that? Many. We've talked about a few of them on this channel before. But going against the US is probably a big no-no. Libya, 2009. Eerily similar to Venezuela and Iraq, Libya has the largest oil reserves in Africa, and they weren't doing that bad. They did a great job managing all those oil revenues, building up a 143-ton gold reserve according to WikiLeaks. They had the highest GDP per capita in Africa, and Libya was on track to become the most influential country in Africa. And also similar to Venezuela and Iraq, Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of Libya, suggested all Muslim and African countries buy oil from Libya using a new currency backed by their giant gold reserves instead of US dollars. In other words, they wanted to sell oil in exchange for gold instead of US dollars, and other major African governments were ready to support. But I think we can all guess what happened next. NATO led a military coalition into Libya in the name of freedom, of course, and on August 20th, 2011, Muammar Gaddafi was executed by Libyan militias, backed by US drone strikes. Years later, it was discovered in Hillary Clinton's emails that NATO really wanted to overthrow Gaddafi's government, mainly because of this plan for an African gold-backed currency, supported by Libya's oil reserves. This was Libya before, and this is Libya today. A failed state with widespread poverty and an ongoing civil war. Why? Because each of these countries tried to break away from using the dollar as payment for their oil, and each of them faced the consequences of America's wrath. Out of all of them, none were able to recover from America's interventions in the name of freedom and in taking down an axis of evil.
And their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, servants of evil, the cult of evil, a monumental struggle of good versus evil.
And they usually ended up far worse than they were before. All these countries had problems, but all of these countries had huge economic potential despite their dictator leaders. But as soon as they moved away from selling oil in dollars, the US swooped in and quickly put an end to the party. And they're not alone. Which begs the question, why is it so important for oil to be only sold in US dollars? What's the big deal? Why is America so quick to liberate people as soon as this oil for dollars arrangement is threatened?
Obama announced the death of Gaddafi, he said this.
Today, the government of Libya announced the death of Muammar Gaddafi. This marks the end of a long and painful chapter for the people of Libya, who now have the opportunity to determine their own destiny in a new and democratic Libya. For 4 decades, the Gaddafi regime ruled the Libyan people with an iron fist. Basic human rights were denied. Innocent civilians were detained, beaten, and killed, and Libya's wealth was squandered. The enormous potential of the Libyan people was held back, and terror was used as a political weapon.
Okay, Libyan wealth was squandered away from people's prosperity. He says, well, actually, it turns out Libyan wealth was squandered away from Western prosperity. That's why the Obama administration went after the Gaddafi administration.
Going to war.
There you go.
That's all. That's like the devil come to weaken the nations. They're weakening you through this programming to, these are the enemies. We got to destroy them. Get you, you know.
Because think about it. Most people in the military are patriotic, and they all stand by that, you know, you have the right to bear arms, you know, protect yourself against foreign and domestic. So most people know what foreign is. That means they're willing to go to war. And then you have domestic, what's going on right here. Everyone in the military, majority of them, have families. And where's your family from? The same country that you're fighting for. So what do you do when the country that you're fighting for is asking you to fight the country?
It says together with the interlocking companies, insurance, business, banks, finance corporations, oil companies, newspapers, magazines, radio, and television, this vast apparatus sits astride the United States and the world. Now, there is not a politician in Washington, D.C. who is not somehow beholden to it. The left rails against it, calling it imperialism, which indeed it is, but the left is run by the same people, the very same ones who control the right. So the left is no more free than we are. I only got a few more to go and we'll be done with this.
What I mean. Left and the right, that's the Democrats and the Republicans.
Yeah. That sounds good right there.
All the same bird.
Two wings of the same bird. They all fly.
They say it's controlled by the same people, and it ain't not one. How many presidents we had?
Right.
You know what, 50 something? Not one. Not one. Not Trump, not Obama, not Reagan, not Kennedy, not one. Well, Kennedy made it, but they got him up out of here. So if they got him up out of here, then we got to talk about them. But not one. They've all been part of the plan.
Now they do talk about oil, but I'm gonna skip over this. Honestly, it's a whole big thing about oil that dates back to like the 1920s with the Middle Eastern countries, and also I want to throw in the Stanford. Have you all heard of the Stanford Research Center? That is also the Club of Rome that has a lot to do with the oil, where again, it's a whole bunch. So if you all look this up, you all can feel free to go through this document. Yeah. But I'm gonna scan right through this. Okay. Now it says, in 1958, startling new development arose. Now, the Advanced Research Products Agency, which is the ARPA, a contracting agency for the Defense Department, approached the SRI, which is the Stanford Research Institute, with a top secret proposal. Now, John Foster at the Pentagon told SRI that what was needed was a program to ensure the United States against technological surprise. Foster wanted to perfect a condition where the environment became a weapon. Now, special bombs to trigger volcanoes or earthquakes, behavioral research on potential enemies, and minerals and metals with potential for new weapons. Now, the project was accepted by the SRI, and the code name was Shaky, AKY. The massive electronic brain in Shaky was capable of carrying out many commands. Its computers having been constructed by IBM for SRI. Now, 28 scientists worked on what is called the human augmentation. Now, the IBM computer even has the capability to solve problems by analogy and recognizes and identifies scientists who works with it. So these computers are very smart. Now, the special applications of this tool can be better imagined than described. Now, Brzezinski knew what he was talking about when he wrote the Technotronic era. Now, Stanford Research Institute works closely with scores of civilian consulting firms trying to apply military technology to domestic situations. Now, this has not always been a success, but as techniques improve, the prospects for massive, all-pervading surveillance, as described by Brzezinski, daily becomes more real. Now, it is already exists and is even in use, even though slight malfunctions from time have to be ironed out. Now, one such civilian consulting firm was such and such. I'm not going to name the names, but they basically put together a surveillance system called Urban Systems Associates, Inc. The purpose of that was to solve social and psychological urban problems by means of military techniques using advanced electronic systems. It is interesting to note that the TRW became the largest credit information collecting company in the credit reporting business as a result and an outcome of its work with the Urban Systems Associates. Now, this should tell us a great deal about just how far this nation is already under total surveillance, which is the first requirement of the 300 Committee. Committee of 300. No dictatorship, especially not one on a global scale, can function without total control over each and every individual. The SRI was well on its way to becoming a key committee of the 300. So out of all this information that it was feeding and all of this, out of it comes this large credit information collecting company in the reporting business as a result. So they knew what they was doing in this. I'll let y'all talk before I punch back in.
It's all through technology.
Basic, yes.
All through technology, like in the book of Daniel said, in the last days, knowledge shall be increased. It brings me to Genesis chapter 3. Basically, this is when the serpent was talking to the woman. Then the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, for God knows that in that day you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So, and that's why when you turn the back of your phone, these iPhones, it got the forbidden fruit that the woman ate. So just letting you know that it's technology, man. You know good and evil on this phone. You can do some good things. We can read some scriptures, but we also can do some evil. We can, read some porn.
For them to keep up with your data is this right here. You see that there, that little green dot right there that's blowing? It focuses on your every single move. Every move you make. It knows when you sleep. It not only knows how much I walk, it knows where I walk.
Your heart rate.
Blood pressure.
We can go pick him up. He sleep
right now.
We know his heart rate.
Hey, he normally go to bed around this time.
Yeah.
It says the increased pressure on this nation for change was applied by the Stanford Research Institute in the early 1960s. Now, the SRI offensive gathered power and momentum. It says switch on your television set and you will see Stanford's victory in front of your eyes. Talk shows featuring heavy sexual details. Special video channels where perversion, rock and roll, and drugs reigned supreme. Where one John Wayne ruled. They said, where once John Wayne ruled, now we have a made-over apology for a man, or is he? Called Michael Jackson, a parody of a human being who is held up as a hero as he gyrates, shuffles, mumbles, and screams his way across television screens in millions of American homes. They also say you have a woman who has been through a series of marriages, gets national coverage. One filthy, half-washed, drug-ridden decalant rock band after another has hours of airtime devoted to its inane sounds and mad gyrations, its clothes, fashions, and language aberrations. Soap operas showing as near as damn it is to wearing pornographic scenes draw no comment. Whereas in early 1960, this would never have been tolerated. Today, it is accepted as normal. We have been subjected and we have succumbed to what Tavis Scott Institute calls future shocks, whose future is now, and we are so numbered by one cultural shock after another that to protest seems like a futile gesture, and therefore logically we think it does no good to protest. In 1986, the Committee of 300 ordered the pressure turned up. The U.S. was not going down fast enough. The United States began the process of recognizing the butchers of Cambodia, the criminal Pol Pot regime, self-confessors to the murder of 2 million Cambodian citizens. In 1991, the wheel turned the full circle. The United States went to war against a friendly nation that had been programmed to trust the Washington traitors. We accused President Hussein of the small nation of Iraq of all manner of evil, none of which was even remotely true. We killed and maimed its children. We left them to starve and to die all manner of diseases. In the same breath, we sent the Bush emissaries of the Committee of 300 to Cambodia to recognize the evil mass murders of 2 billion Cambodians who were sacrificed by the Committee of 300's depopulation of cities experiment, which the big cities of the United States will experience in the not too distant future.
They got weapons of mass destruction. They get in the country. Where the weapons at? I guess not.
Everything is going according to what Tavis Scott ordered and what the social scientists at Stanford mapped out. Times do not change. They are made to change. All changes are pre-planned and come as a result of careful action. We have been changed gradually at first, but now the pace of change is picking up. The United States is being transformed from one nation under God to a polyglot of nations under several gods. The U.S. is no longer...
No such thing as several gods under... It went from God and it went right to the devil.
Listen, like
right to the devil.
Guys beside me.
Right to the devil. So that's what he's saying.
The U.S. is no longer under one nation under God. The framers of the Constitution have lost the battle. Our forebears spoke a common language and believed in a common religion, Christianity, and held common ideals. There were no aliens in our mindset. That came later in a deliberately planned attempt to break up the United States into a series of fragmented nationalities, culture, and beliefs. If you doubt this, go down the east side of New York or the west side of Los Angeles on any given Saturday and look around. The United States has become several nations struggling to coexist under a common system of government. When the floodgates of immigration were opened wide by Franklin D. Roosevelt, a cousin of the head of the Committee of 300, the culture shock caused great confusion and dislocation and made one nation an unworkable concept. Now, the Club of Rome and NATO have exacerbated the situation. Love thy neighbor is an idea that will not work unless your neighbor is as yourself. It says now, but it was interesting about the aliens. how they brought that in to it says there were no aliens in our midst. That came later in a deliberately planned attempt to break up the United States into a series of fragmented nationalities, cultures, and beliefs. So you gotta believe.
They mean like aliens, like UFO aliens, or
yeah,
they mean like illegal aliens?
Like Green Man, the big head. You know?
Well, to be honest with you,
because the way he just said driving down the road.
He said because it's saying that you may believe in the aliens, but I may believe it. They needed some type of to separate a culture of people together. They need to throw like you may.
We already gave them color. We already got them. Basically, we already got them with ethnicity to divide, like divide and conquer.
Yeah. How else can we divide them? How can we put conspiracy theories in the pot or whatever? Oh, you believe in aliens? Okay, the Green Man. Okay, these people believe in the aliens. And these people don't like that.
I believe they're gonna
solid split.
They're gonna use that alien stuff to explain away the rapture.
I mean, I was just
going to that's what
just
Operation Blue Beam or something.
I believe that.
Is that what it is?
Project Blue Beam.
The aliens, like you said, to try to explain the fact that we're gonna have spiritual warfare going on.
Millions of people gonna be missing.
Yes,
explain that way.
And you got demons around here that's gonna be doing work.
Yeah. Let's see. Revelations 3. Revelations 3 verses 10.
Yep.
Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. That's speaking of the rapture. He's going to keep you from the temptation. He's going to keep you from the tribulation. John 14 verses 3. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Matthew 24 verses 38 to 42. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until
partying.
Until kicking it until the day that Noah entered the ark. And did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then two men will be in the field. So me and you, we in the field, we working, we trying to make a day's wage. You at work at your job, I'm at work at my job. Two men will be in the field. One will be taken, one will be left. You disappear. You got to be able to explain
For sure.
That's what they're trying to do. Two women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and one will be left. So they bringing this up. They got pilots or military pilots. They got police officers coming out and said, we seen something in the sky. People that's, like I say, pilots and people that's on boats. We seen something. So we're bringing this UFO stuff up. They got the project,
slowly putting it in there. Yeah.
The Bermuda Triangle where people just disappearing on ships and planes.
How we can put that into play.
When this happened, when these millions of people gonna have these UFO holograms all in the
everything
sky.
has been set into play. We already got people that believe in it already. Now,
everybody do believe it.
Destruction.
Only got low key just a couple more paragraphs, and that's gonna be it of this. And we'll get into the topic.
Wake up and the wife gone. Wife and the kids just gone.
The US dollar. Because I said that the Messiah has to rule from Jerusalem, the false Messiah first. Our eschatology tells us through a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that there has to be a last ruling state to replace the United States. I wrote this book, Jerusalem in the Quran, some 12 years ago, published here in Malaysia. And in this book I said that the US dollar is going to collapse. And the United States will no longer be the ruling state in the world, 12 years ago. And that Israel is going to replace the United States as the next ruling state in the world. This was written 12 years ago. It has remained a bestseller for the last 12 years. Israel has to replace the United States. When Britain was the ruling state, there was one monetary system. When the United States replaced Britain, there was another monetary system. And so when Israel replaces the United States, you must have a new monetary system. I gave you a hint just now. The US dollar is going to collapse. It has already collapsed, actually. It's about 1,800 US dollars now for 1 ounce of gold. Yeah, about 1,800. If Israel attacks Iran, that's it for the US dollar. That's it. When the US dollar collapses, I believe what they will do is to demonetize it, meaning it cannot be used as legal tender. So you'll have to take your dollars to redeem it for the new money that the United States government will issue. Many countries have done that in the past. The new money, however, when you redeem your US dollars, you'll only get a fraction of the value. Black America will lose a lot of money, but that's peanuts to what white America is going to use. And the United States have guns. People are allowed to buy guns. So the world can expect fireworks in the United States in the years to come. This is not any original analysis on my part at all. Many people have come to that conclusion. The US dollar is going to collapse. They're going to demonetize it. Some new money is going to come to replace it. And there's going to be fireworks in the United States when people are ripped off of their wealth. The collapse of the US dollar will reverberate in the monetary system around the world. And people who are holding weak currencies, like the Pakistani rupee, the Bangladeshi taka, the Indonesian rupiah, the Egyptian pound, etc., they're going to be in a state of panic when the US dollar collapses. And they're going to want to dump their paper money as fast as they can because of runaway inflation. And as they dump their paper, the inflation is going to multiply. And so the system will collapse like butter, easily, and make way for the new monetary system of only invisible and intangible electronic money.
Although geographically separate, the city-states of London, the Vatican, and the District of Columbia are one interlocking empire called Empire of the City. The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia, and spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the First Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. President was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810, no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. America's blood-soaked war of independence against the British bankrupted America and turned its citizens into permanent debt slaves of the king. In the War of 1812, the British torched and burned to the ground the White House and all U.S. government buildings and destroyed ratification records of the U.S. Constitution.
Contrary to popular belief, Africa is not poor. You don't go to a poor continent to make money. Africa is, in fact, the richest continent on the globe. Why haven't African leaders tried to make use of their resources? You might ask. They did, and every time they met the same fate: death. Some under mysterious circumstances like Magufuli and MKO Abiola, who coincidentally both had a heart attack moments after plans to industrialize Tanzania and Nigeria's gold and oil reserves. U.S. Ambassador Susan Rice served MKO a cup of tea, which many people believe was the cause of his death. Other leaders have been killed directly by the orders of multinational corporations, like Ken Saro-Wiwa being hung by Shell. Or how about the first democratically elected leader of the Congo, Lumumba, being executed in a coup propped by Belgium and CIA on the orders of Union Minery? Congo is in fact the richest country on the planet, yet has the number 2 poorest citizens. After they dismembered Lumumba's body, the CIA plant dictator Mobutu took control of Congo for 30 years. Similar cases can be found across the entire continent of Africa and the entire global south. Latin America and Africa are still under hostage from these corporations. They have killed everyone who's gotten in their way, including but not limited to Dag Hammarskjöld. The UN Secretary General, his plane was shot down in attempts to liberate the Congo from exploitation. JFK, being close friends with Dag and Lumumba, JFK was furious with Devlin and the CIA for their role in their demise, and planned to scatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. Weeks later, he was dead under mysterious circumstance. His death has a lot of similarity with a leader from Sweden, Olof Palme. He wanted to continue Dag's legacy and help Africa and Latin America be free from the global elite. Sadly, he met the same fate. When looking at these deaths individually, it may look like coincidence. Yet when you...
So we got, and now this is my favorite part. Now this is my favorite part because this is something I'm like they finessed on this one. That says an outstanding example of social conditioning to accept change, even when it is recognized as unwelcome change by the large population group in the sites of Stanford Research Institute, was the advent of the Beatles. Now, the Beatles were brought to the United States as part of a social experiment which would subject large population groups to brainwashing of which they were not even aware. Now, when Travis Scott brought the Beatles to the United States, nobody could have imagined the cultural disaster that was to follow in their wake. Now, I'm just going to punch in real quick. The Beatles was the first band of the British invasion to come to the United States. Now, the Beatles were an integral part of the Aquarian conspiracy, a living organism which sprang from the changing images of man, which is the URH 489-2150 policy research report. So they've done research, guys. Now, which was prepared by an SRI Center for the Study of Social Policy, Director Professor Willis Harman. Now, the phenomenon of the Beatles was not a spontaneous rebellion by youth against the old social system. Instead, it was a carefully crafted plot to introduce by a conspiratorial body which could not be identified, a highly destructive and divisive element into a large population group targeted for change against its will. Now, new words and new phrases prepared by Travis Scott were introduced to America along with the Beatles. Words such as rock in relation to music sounds, teenager, which means like cool, discovered, and pop music were a lexicon of disguised code words signifying the acceptance of drugs, and arrived with and accompanied the Beatles wherever they went, to be discovered by teenagers.
Turning up.
Incidentally, the word teenagers was never used until just before the Beatles arrived on the scene, courtesy of the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Now, as in the case of Gang Wars, nothing could or would have been accomplished without the cooperation of the media, especially the electronic media, and in particularly Ed Sullivan, who had been coached by the conspirators as to the role he was to play. Nobody would have paid much attention to the motley crew from Liverpool and the 12 atonal system of music that was to follow had it not been for an overabundance of press exposure. Now, the 12 atonal system consisted of heavy repetitive sounds taken from the music of the cult of the Dionysus and the Baal priesthood by Adorno, and given a modern flavor by this special friend of the Queen of England, and hence the Committee of 300. Now, Tavistock and its Stanford Research Center created trigger words, which then came into general usage around rock music and its fans. Now, trigger words created a distinctive new breakaway, largely young population group, which was persuaded by social engineering and conditioning to believe that the Beatles really were their favorite group. All trigger words devised in the context of rock music were designed for mass control of the new targeted group, the youth of America. Now, the Beatles did a perfect job, or perhaps it would be more correct to say that the Tavistock and Stanford did a perfect job. The Beatles merely were reacting like trained robots with a little help from their friends. Code words for using drugs and making it cool. The Beatles became a highly visible new type, more Tavistock jargon, and such as it was not long before the group made new styles, fads in clothing, hairstyles, and language, which upset the older generation as was intended. Now, this was part of the fragmentation, maladaptation process worked out with Willis Harman and his team of social scientists and genetic engineering tinkers and put into action. Now, the role of the print and electronic media in our society is crucial to the success of brainwashing large population groups. Gang wars ended in Los Angeles in 1966 as the media withdrew its coverage. Now, the same thing will happen with the current wave of gang wars in Los Angeles. Street gangs will wither on the vine once media saturation coverage is toned down and then completely withdrawn. As in 1966, the issue would become burned out. Street gangs will have served their purpose of creating turbulence and insecurity. Now, exactly the same pattern will be followed in the case of rock music. Deprived of media attention, it will eventually take its place in history. Now, following the Beatles, who incidentally were put together by the Tavistock Institute, came the Made in England rock groups who, like the Beatles, had Theo Adorno write their cult lyrics and compose all the music. I hate to use the beautiful words in the context of Beatlemania, but it reminds me of how wrongfully the word lover is used when referring to the filthy interaction between two homosexuals, with writhing in pig's will to call it rock music in an insult, likewise the language used in rock lyrics. Now, Tavistock and Stanford Research then embarked on the second phase of the work commissioned by the Committee of 300. This new phase turned up the heat for social change in America. As quickly as the Beatles had appeared on the American scene, so too did the Beat generation. Trigger words designed to separate and fragmentate society. Now, the media now focused its attention on the Beat generation. Other Tavistock coined words came seemingly out of nowhere. The beatniks, the hippies, the flower children became part of the vocabulary of America. It became popular to drop out and wear dirty jeans, go about with long unwashed hair. The Beat generation cut itself from mainstream America. They became just as infamous as the cleaner Beatles before them. Just a quick punch in before the last paragraph. You know, they made it cool to drop out, wear your hair, just to be a hippie, to put up the peace sign, to wear all these vibrant clothes. Now, the newly created group and its lifestyle swept millions of young Americans into the cult. American youth underwent a radical revolution without ever being aware of it, while the older generation stood by helplessly, unable to identify the source of the crisis, and thus reacting into a maladaptive manner against its manifestation, which were drugs of all types, marijuana, and later LSD. Now, so conveniently provided for them by the Swiss pharmaceutical company, which is the SANDOZ, following the discovery by one of its chemists, Albert Hofmann, how to make synthetic iracetamine, I know I messed it up, a powerful mind-altering drug. Now, the Committee of 300 financed the project through one of their banks, the S.C. Warburg, and the drug was carried to America by the philosopher Aldous Huxley. The new wonder drug was promptly distributed in sample-sized packages, handed out free of charge on college campuses across the United States and at rock concerts, which became the leading vehicle for proliferating the use of drugs. Now, the question that cries out for an answer is what the Drug Enforcement Agency, which is the DEA, what were they doing at the time? Now, there is compelling circumstantial evidence that would appear to indicate that the DEA knew what was going on, but was ordered not to take any action. Now, with very substantial numbers of the new British rock bands arriving in the U.S., rock concerts began to become a fixture on the social calendar of American youth. Its tandem with these concerts, the use of drugs among the youth rose in proportion. The devilish bedlam of discordant heavy beat sounds numbed the minds of listeners so that they were easily persuaded to try the new drug on the basis that everybody is doing it. Now, peer pressure is a very strong weapon. The new culture received maximum coverage from the jackal media, which cost the conspirators not one single thin dime. Now, the great anger was felt by a number of civic leaders and churchmen over the new cult, but their energies were misdirected against the result of what was going on and not against the cause. Now, critics of the rock cult made the same mistakes that had been made in the Prohibition era. They criticized law enforcement agencies, teachers, parents, anybody but the conspirators. Now, because of the anger and resentment I feel toward the Great Drug Plague, I make no apology for using the language which is not customary for me to use. One of the worst drug slobs ever to walk the streets of America was Allen Ginsberg. This Ginsberg pushed the use of LSD through advertising, which cost him nothing, although under normal circumstances, it would have cost millions of dollars in TV advertisement revenues. Now, this free advertising for drugs and LSD in particular reached a new high in the late 1960s, thanks to the ever-willing cooperation of the media. Now, the effect of Ginsberg's mass advertising campaign was devastating. The American public was subjected to one culture future shock after another in rapid succession.
Psalms 98 verse 5, make music to the Lord with the harp and the sound of singing. So you're supposed to make music to the Lord and for the Lord. If you're making music about drugs, driving, stealing, killing, sex.
Read that verse one more time.
Psalms 98 verse 5, make music to the Lord with the harp and the sound of singing. So you're supposed to make it to the Lord
with the harp,
nothing else,
and the sound of singing.
It said Ginsberg was able to give several nationally televised performances extolling the virtues of LSD and marijuana under the guise of new ideas and new cultures developing in the art and music world. Not to be outdone by the electronic media, Ginsberg admirers wrote glowing articles about this colorful man in the art and social columns of all of America's largest newspapers and magazines. There had never been such an across the media board free advertising campaign in the history of newspaper, radio, television, and its cost the promoters of the Aquarian conspiracy, NATO, and the Club of Rome not one red cent. It was all absolutely free advertising for LSD, the only thing disguised as art and culture. Now, this article gets into more about LSD, more about the entertainment. It also gets into what countries that they brought down to bring the drugs in and how the politicians knew about it. Now again, this is an old article, guys, and that will conclude me reading this. I guess the point is just that how everything is done by design. These little guys on the street corners, they're just a small man on the board.
Yeah.
Because
your local drug dealing kingpin ain't nothing but a small man on the board.
Yeah.
The plug,
because they the one brung it in.
He's a king. The plug is a small piece on the board.
That's
good, man.
I conclude at that. I'm not even gonna go into it, but these are large think tanks.
Yeah.
And these think tanks put other smaller versions of think tanks in the world. So you go to this think tank, and then we give you a job. If you don't come through that think tank, you don't get to be a part of what we have in store. Now, you can kind of work for us and we can pay you less, but you have to be a part of the think tank so we know you know how to push out these agendas. This is a plan that went way back, they say, until like the 1800s. They had stuff in the 1800s, like literally, like this is a big document. And we only on page 60. It goes to 169.
So do you think Tartaria had anything to do with this?
Like what? As far as what?
Or it's like they came up with this during Tartarian days because they knew that they were going to get rid of Tartaria, but how do we build it back up?
Well,
after the mud floods and everything like that.
Yeah, I don't think they never ever got rid of it. They just changed the history.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you think they built this during those days?
That I can't say for sure, to be honest. But I do know that nobody really knows any, like, they won't, like, nobody can sit out and do an interview of saying this is what happened during those times. Like, they got rid of all the information. They still have it. We just don't have access to it. Now, if you look at these buildings, you can clearly see that these were up for a long time. This building looked like it was underground. Certain cities are underwater and all of that. You can clearly see
several buildings.
But I think the most the biggest agenda of it all was just to, like, hey, we need to get the whole world on one accord. Everybody, we are part of this club, and we need to put. That's just like if we in control of this whole world. I'm gonna say, Dave, you and your family is over the east. You and your family over the west. I'm over the south. You make your kids gonna be over these states. Your kids, you know what I mean? It's all
maybe having those philosophers and professors and stuff. These tanks.
We going back to the
most intelligent.
They came up with the music. The think tanks wrote the music for the Beatles. They didn't write that music.
Going back to
people in a cult. He said they wrote that music.
We going back to the tower.
Like when I asked my granddad, I said, like, man, what was the music like before, like the Beatles? And he didn't know, but he was just telling me it was like doo-wop. It was like soul music. You know, it was this. He said we didn't hear nothing about weed until he was like that came later on. And when they introduced that,
came from them demonic people.
He didn't say we didn't know nothing about smoking weed at first.
A place called Kokomo. Yeah, I mean, listen. Obviously, all of this was set in place. This is a plan that's been put in place for a long time. The question is long story short, everything you've learned today, and go do your own research, go dig into it some more, because there's a lot more than what she just read to you and what we spoke about.
Can you Breeze, you want to hit up the gay manifesto?
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into the gay manifesto, but do you all have any quick topics in relation that y'all want to get in?
I cover most of mine. Yeah. I just want you to cover that because that's basically a line, but that's something like what you just read. He's saying everything that they're gonna do, you know, what their demonic goals are. And if you don't follow suit, if you are a heterosexual and you like a woman, we got an issue with you.
Is the first one or the second
one? Just click.
They can get you up out of here. Long story short.
Thing is, they was getting with it.
If you ain't looking at, you know what I'm saying, if you ain't looking at the same sex, they can get you up out of here, man.
So we got the
that's clear in schools right now. They're getting teachers up out of here for not letting children come to school and, you know, love on other same-sex children.
So we have the Homosexual Manifesto as to Congress in 1987 and implemented by the Introtopic U.S. Supreme Court in 2015.
So this is what they gave to Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You said implemented. Hold on, wait a minute.
Hey, this is Congress now.
Listen. Hold on. It's a difference. They implemented. That means it's in place.
Okay, we'll check it out.
The plan is in place. The plan done changed. No, the plan is started already.
Now, this is called the Documentation of the Homosexual Agenda, the Homosexual Manifesto. And if you all want to look this up, it is by Michael Swift, the Gay Revolutionary. Yes. Now it says, We shall sodomize your sons, embodiments of your feeble masculinity, of your shallow dreams and your vulgar lies. We shall seduce them in your schools, in your dormitories, in your gymnasiums, in your locker rooms, in your sports arenas, in your seminars, in your youth groups, in your movie theater bathrooms, in your army bunkhouses, in your truck stops, in your all-male clubs, in your houses of Congress, wherever men are with men together. Now, as you can see, what they're trying to do with the educational system, like it's getting younger and younger, what they're starting to introduce, and how they are forcing some of the hockey, some of these sports people to wear the pride shirts and to celebrate the pride night, and yeah, so you all can kind of see that. Now, it says, your sons shall become our minions and do our bidding. They will be recast in our image. They will come to crave and adore us. Women, you cry for freedom. You say you are no longer satisfied with men. They make you unhappy. We, connoisseurs of the masculine face, the masculine physique, shall take your men from you then. We will amuse them. We will instruct them. We will embrace them when they weep. Women, you say you wish to live with each other instead of with men. Then go and be with each other. We shall give your men pleasures they have never known, because we are foremost men too. And only man knows how to truly please another man. Only one man can understand the depth and feeling, the mind and body of another man. All laws banning homosexual activity will be revoked. Instead, legislation shall be passed which engenders love between men. All homosexuals must stand together as brothers. We must be united artistically, philosophically, socially, politically, and financially. We will triumph only when we present a common face to the victuous heterosexual enemy. If you dare to cry faggot, fairy, queer at us, we will stab you in your cowardly hearts and defile your dead, puny bodies. We shall write poems of love between men. We shall stage plays in which man openly caresses man. We shall make films about the love between heroic men, which will replace the cheap, superficial, sentimental, insipid, juvenile, heterosexual infatuations presently dominating your cinema screens. We shall sculpt statues of beautiful young men of bold athletes, which will be placed in your parks, your squares, your plazas.
Don't Rome got that in a lot of places over here?
I think Greece too.
Got the penis and all that.
The museums of the world will be filled only with paintings of graceful naked lads. Our writers and artists will make love between men and fashionable and de rigueur, and we will succeed because we are adept at setting styles. We will eliminate heterosexual liaisons through usage of the redeeming the rainbow 203 devices of wit and ridicule, devices which we are skilled in employing. We will unmask the powerful homosexuals who masquerade as heterosexuals. You will be shocked and frightened when you find that your presidents and their sons, your industrialists, your senators, your mayors, your generals, your athletes, your film stars, your television personalities, your civic leaders, your priests are not the safe, familiar, bourgeois, heterosexual figures you assume them to be. We are everywhere. We have infiltrated your ranks. Be careful when you speak of homosexuals, because we are always among you. We may be sitting across the desk from you. We may be sleeping in the same bed with you. There will be no promises. We are not middle-class weaklings, highly intelligent. We are the natural aristocrats of the human race, and steely-minded aristocrats never settle for less. Those who oppose us will be exiled. We shall raise vast private armies as Mishima did to defeat you. We shall conquer the world because warriors inspired by and banded together by homosexual love and honor are invincible as we, the ancient Greek soldiers. The family unit spawning around of lies, betrayals, and mediocrity, hypocrisy
Hypocrisy.
Okay. Hypocrisy and violence will be abolished. Now, the family unit, which only dampens imagination and curbs free will, must be eliminated. Perfect boys will be conceived and grown in the genetic laboratory. They will be bonded together in communal setting under the control and instruction of homosexual savants.
Now we can see that.
All churches who condemn true. Us will be closed. Our only gods are handsome young men. We adhere to a cult of beauty and moral and aesthetic. All that is ugly, and vulgar and banal will be annihilated. Now, since we are alienated from middle-class heterosexual conventions, we are free to live our lives according to the dictates of the pure imagination. For us, too much is not enough. The exquisite society to emerge will be governed by an elite compromise of gay poets. That's
It's sad that a lot of that stuff is already happening, and it's true. Like
baby,
we were talking about. Yeah, I was just gonna get to it, the perfect man and stuff like that. And it made me think. Like, remember in Genesis in 19 when they were telling Lot, they came looking for Lot now. And he was like, look, take my daughters. I got 2 of them. They ain't even seen the man yet. They ain't even touched by them.
They was looking for those angels. Yeah.
I'm looking for something.
Bring the man. Bring those 2 men that came and said before we may know them. May know them. Romans 1 verse 27. Likewise, also the men leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error, which was due. When they receive in themselves the penalty of what they receive is the demons they receive for the error which they're committing when they have homosexual sex or adultery. Anything that God says don't do. When you do that, you receive in yourself the recompense for that error, the payment.
Yeah,
for that, which is demons.
Yeah, it's the payment.
And you continue on doing it, your mind is seared. It give you over to a reprobated mind where you don't even know the word. He wrote it on your heart. You don't even listen to your heart no more. I don't say nothing. Do your thing. That's what the heart say. So
yeah.
But thank you for you gonna continue on, or you done?
Oh, that's it.
But thank you for reading. You've been doing a lot of reading today.
Yeah.
So this is the work we do for the Lord, and we just want you guys to wake up to the fact that the money, you can't hold on to that money. That money,
shout out.
It's not backed by gold no more. And it seems like the people that's over in Iran and China and Russia seem like they don't care about.
Well, the gold is one thing. Gold is one thing, but your dollars, that paper. You better start spending that paper.
Then it's going to digital, the digital currency.
You already, like I said, we already there. I mean,
already swiping.
Yeah, but the CBDC, that's we there with the swipe. That's a little different.
That's a little different. No, but we're on our way.
Yeah, once the light is gone, it's gonna be nothing but dark. And you're gonna wish you had listened to us. You're gonna wish you had got out of phone. Wish you got in these scriptures and start praying and getting closer to God and trying to follow Him. And you wish you would have wished like them 12. I think 12 wives. I mean 12 housemaids or something. 12 maids. They want some 6 had oil.
Bridesmaids.
Some did. Bridesmaids or whatever. You're gonna wish you didn't go back into the world to play.
I tell you what, man. No matter what happens. It ain't never too late.
Until it's too late. If you take that mark.
Don't say I got another day to do it today.
That's why I said it's never too late. But like what he said, until it's too late.
You take that mark, it's too late.
A lot of people say better late than never, but never late is better.
You take that mark.
And all this is not to give you all worldly knowledge, but to just to make you all aware of of who's making these plans for you all, and how they consider themselves gods, and their control and their beliefs and their religions and how they look at you. You know what I mean? And how everything, majority of it, is done by design to bring us down to our demise and bring our morale down.
Right. And it's not worldly knowledge. Yeah. It's not worldly knowledge. What you gave was actual knowledge, and the scriptures verified it.
Yeah.
So it's not worldly at all. This is what happened. What she read is what's happening along, and it parallels the Bible.
From an old document. This ain't from last 2 years.
Yeah.
This man gathered all this information and then presented it in 1990.
You better be glad she didn't read Oliver Pike. He brought up the World War I, World War II, and World War III, and the coming event.
That's next.
He said World War III was going to be the most deadliest, coldest bloodshed war that it is.
We gotta get on that.
Yeah, I wish we would have covered that.
We still can. We
get to
you want to?
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
that's
not
part of
bring up in the.
Is it a part of the
Well, we can. Well, since I think that'll be a topic that we can cover in the next episode.
But say that for the next episode. Stay on the lookout.
Stay on the lookout, man. Please hop in those comments.
Man,
and
listen. Shout out our narrator. Myra been in this joint reading for what? Hours some change. Hours some change. Man. Shout out to narrator. The Lord that gave her the spiritual craft. So that she can work that, can work that computer and use what she got. Okay.
Hey man, we love y'all so much. Oh yeah, let me get us.
And make sure y'all hit the Cash App. Donations.
Thank you all
Send
for like, comments,
for all promotion needs. Anything you need.
Ephesians 2 verses 8 and 9. For we are saved by grace through faith, and that not of ourselves, not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man shall boast. Romans 10 verses 9 and 10. If we declare with our mouth that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God risen him from the dead, then you will be saved. For it's with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it's with the mouth that you profess your faith and are saved. Along with you just professing your faith and believing in your heart is a walk that, Jesus said, if anyone will come after me, let him deny himself, then take up his cross and follow me. So it's a path through denial that you're gonna follow to Jesus Christ, and it shows up in your fruit because you believe in your heart. You can't say you believe in Jesus and not follow him. He said, if anyone says they believe in me or know me, but does not keep my commandments, they're a liar, and the truth is not found in them. So I pray that this New World Order video we did enlighten you and makes you want to get in the Bible, because
and the clips that you all will check out going as we do have clips to go along, but
bless y'all.
Yeah, and y'all think the devil is y'all God? Hey, he clearly working against y'all.
For some of y'all,
he working against everybody.
Only a remnant shall be saved. So for most of y'all,
I think a remnant is about what this, but and all these. I'm sorry. I don't want to put up the threesome, but
just a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And all these people claiming to be Christians.
I tell you all the time, if Jesus came back today, 5%.
Oh yeah,
I'm in the group. I'm here marching behind him. I know I'm in there.
10% is going back with him.
That's
the fear of the Lord is beginning.
Everybody else gonna have to thug it out and see if you can make it.
All right, man.
Stick around.
God bless you all. May peace and grace be upon you all.